NASCAR drivers have been talking about for many years, right? The texting, the calling, all of this.
Well, they weren't talking about texting back in the day.
I'm talking about like in 2013.
They were writing letters.
I'm talking about in 2013 with Chicagoland, and there was a specific driver, Elliott Sadler, that had to mention a driver. Do you remember who he was talking about in this moment?
I don't. At Chicagoland?
At Chicagoland in 2013.
He
had some beef with.
Do you want a hint?
He had a beef with a driver. I know it didn't happen at Chicagoland. Maybe he'd mentioned it at Chicagoland. I don't know.
It didn't happen
the weekend before.
Yeah, he
was
addressed
it was the weekend
in a
before.
presser.
Do you want a hint?
I know where we're going with this
Okay.
already. There's only one reason Mike Davis calls me. It's because he's got something up his sleeve that he's like, oh, I bet Regan doesn't know about this one, and let's get him in here. Let's bring him in here and really put him on the spot. So I'm sure I know what's coming right about here. Yeah.
Right.
It was you.
Yeah.
Let's listen to what Elliott Sadler had to say in this clip, courtesy of NASCAR.
Yes, Regan did reach out to me this week, and we had a 20 or 30-minute conversation. Also Dale Jr. reached out to me this week because he's the owner of the car, and he and I have been friends since we were teenagers, and had some good conversation. So I'm still pissed about it, and Regan knows that. He knows where I stand, and he took 100% of the blame and understood why I'm upset and why I was upset.
It doesn't,
I'm a
doesn't
liar.
sound like you making phone calls.
No, I'm a liar on the show already because I got to be honest.
I was going to say, who do we believe in this?
Or did Elliott Sadler make it
No,
up?
I mean, I believe Elliott saying that.
Okay.
And to Jason Keller's point just earlier in the show, I do not remember having a conversation with him. That's going to sound terrible to say it that way, but I don't remember having that conversation. And quite honestly, the only thing I remember about that incident happened at Loudon. I've never heard that clip either.
Right.
I didn't know he talked to the media or he had. I think that was probably in his media availability.
Yeah.
If I had to guess. So I can honestly tell you, sitting here, I can't tell you how that conversation went. I can't tell you what we discussed, what we said, because I don't remember it. With that said, the parts of that I remember the on-track incident. I remember immediately after the race what took place in the garage area. I didn't remember, and knowing I was coming on here and knowing this was probably going to come up at some point or another, I did watch back through a couple other clips. I really didn't even remember what I said in my interview post-race because they came and grabbed me after all that took place in the garage area. But as the way it goes down, and again, different perspectives, right? Everybody has different perspectives on incidents. Was the incident my fault? Absolutely, and I owned up to that immediately, right? I said, well, yeah, I got into your left rear and you crashed ultimately. But what I remember is getting out of the car, walking back to the garage area. I'm heading to the hauler, and I hear this really large, angry gentleman yelling my name from a ways away. And here he comes at me. And Elliott Sadler, for if you guys haven't met him or for anybody that doesn't know Elliott, which I think most people listening probably do, Elliott's a big guy. He's a lot bigger than I am. Like, that's not a battle. And again, I don't mind rolling around on the ground doing whatever we got to do. That wasn't a battle that was going to go very well for me. So here comes Elliott up to me, and he's mad, right? He was in the whatever the Dash for Cash program was at the time, and I forget what it was called. I think it was still Dash for Cash back then. Yeah. So he's in that program, and that program shifted on a week-to-week basis for 4 weeks throughout the season or 5 weeks. And if you didn't finish good, you weren't in the next week. And if you won it, you could make that extra $100,000. And when you're running at the Xfinity level, that's a big deal. It's a big deal for the teams. It's a big deal for the drivers. No matter, everybody's contracts are structured different on that stuff and how that works out. So he's mad. He feels like I just cost him $100,000. And again, my perspective of it was a little bit different. I was like, well, I made a move. I felt like I got run down pretty low on the racetrack. Did I wreck you? Yeah, I did wreck you because I got in the corner and I didn't have the grip level that I thought I was going to have. But as it works out and he's coming to me in the garage, I just remember thinking, oh, shit, this is going to hurt. Like, what is my approach? Because as mad as he looked and I don't know what's coming, and I'm willing to own up to it and I think any incident I was ever involved in, again, somebody will probably pull this and find it and make a liar out of me, and just like I'm a liar right now from earlier in the show. But any incident I was involved in, I was a big believer, get the helmet off also. Like, let's have helmets off and let's go that way with it. So this just so happened by the time he got to me, he may have, I don't know, because he wrecked, he may have gone to the care center. I don't know how it all transpired after the race. Well, as he's coming up to me, I'm like, all right, if he starts swinging because he's really mad, what's my approach right here? Like, how am I going to mitigate some of these damages? So I had this big plan worked up in my head. I'm like, all right, if Elliott gets to me, he starts swinging, I'm going to go in immediately for the body as quick as I can. I'm going to get as tight to him because he's bigger than me, and it's going to be harder to swing. He's not going to be able to get his arms around.
Just like
really,
a bear hug?
Yeah, he's not going to make good contact. And then maybe if it goes to the ground, at least I got a fighting chance of, it's one thing if it goes to the ground. It's still, you're not going to get any punches in or anything good at that moment. And so that was my theory and my strategy there. And we had a truck driver, Trucker Matt was his name at the time, and he was a very, very large gentleman. Like, Elliott Sadler's big, but Trucker Matt had a fist that was the size of my head. So as I'm turned around facing eye to eye with Elliott, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And I forget who was doing PR for me at the time, but honestly, it was probably Heath White, actually. If I think back to 2013, I'm pretty sure it was Heath White. So, Heath is my size. You guys know Heath working here in the building, and he's not a big guy either. And as Elliott's coming to me, he's really, really mad, and then he kind of slows down a little bit, and he's not really coming right at me quite in the same pace and in the same anger, and it turns into we're discussing it. Oh. And I'm like, wow, well, how did that happen? How did this not get out of control? And then we get all done, and he says his piece, and that he's gonna wreck me, and he's gonna take care of it, and everything that he's gonna do, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, it's all on audio file or it's on TV, right? Like, they picked all that up, and I turn around, I'm like, man, that was really odd that he didn't just come whale me. Like, I was ready to get punched right here. I was ready for that moment to happen. I turn around, and Big Trucker Matt was standing behind me the whole time, and I'm like, okay, now it all makes sense here. Now, okay, that makes a little bit more sense, but yeah, I don't recall, and this is how you know I'm honest. Is I came on here saying I don't
remember
really
it.
Call people. I didn't remember calling them afterwards, and maybe I'm a nicer guy than I thought I was.
I have a question about that incident. Right, it was on track. It was a pretty jerk move. What the hell, man?
Jerk move? Which tape did you watch?
I don't know. You wrecked him for $100,000.
Did you watch the incident?
I actually only read about it. But
you read about it. Okay. Well,
how old were you when
there
this
you go.
happened?
Yeah, you were probably in the third grade or something like that, if I had to guess. Yeah. Well, go back and watch it and tell me if it was a jerk move or not, and then see where I was at on the racetrack as I was trying to make the move at the end of the race, and then we'll figure it. And if I had to guess, that's probably what we discussed. Was like, hey man, I felt like I was down there, I was inside, and yeah, I got run all the way down there, and whether it was a block or whether it was just thinking he was going to try to pass the guy in front of him, I don't recall that part of it. Now, if we have Elliott Sadler on here, if you guys have another surprise and he's calling in too, which who knows what's going to happen, he will be able to vividly tell you in his mind all that stuff, because this goes back to what we've been discussing. He was the one that got the bad end of the deal. Now I still lost like 8 spots because I got stuck behind him as he's spinning. I couldn't get around him to clear him and get to the bottom and still have a good run. So I don't even know where we finished that day, but it sticks out more in the person's brain that's on the bad side of it than the other side.